Welcome to the Student Choice in Text Selection webinar. My name is Kristen Bauk, and I'm the English Language Arts Specialist for Academic Standards at the Minnesota Department of Education.
I'm Catherine Hoffman-Thompson, educator at Pine Point School.
I'm Michi Nguyen, Ethnic Studies K-8 Integration Specialist for Academic Standards at MDE.
And I'm Lee Nida, one of the supervisors for the Academic Standards team at MDE. Thank you for viewing today. This webinar is part of a series of recorded webinars designed to support teachers and school leaders in the implementation of the 2020 ELA standards, with full implementation coming in the 2025-2026 school year. We are releasing these webinars one by one, each group during a year of our implementation timeline. Yet we hope you will use them in any way that aligns with your school's needs. You can find previous webinars on the MDE ELA implementation webpage.
The Minnesota Department of Education is committed to equity. The 2020 ELA standards represent a prioritization of equity and aim to improve equitable conditions for learning for all students. We also believe that these implementation support webinars will help us ensure consistent implementation of the 2020 standards fully in the 2025-26 school year. Providing students choice prioritizes equity as students learn to self-select texts that represent their perspectives and identities, as well as those of people different from them. Choice is a research-based foundation for student engagement and improves conditions for learning. It also, of course, gives students options. Many of you are likely familiar with the Minnesota Multi-Tiered System of Support, or MNMTSS. We want to emphasize that standards implementation is not an additional task on top of or separate from MNMTSS, but is embedded in the multi-layered practices and support as the anchor of Tier 1 instruction. This webinar will include a grounding in how student choice is an evidence-based practice to increase engagement and support literacy learning. We will then discuss how student choice is embedded in the 2020 ELA standards. Offering students choice is important for both independent individual reading and for teacher-directed class instruction and tasks. We'll also cover teachers' role in supporting student choice, as well as frequently asked questions and resources.
Providing choice is an evidence-based practice. Giving students choice is a way to boost student engagement with their learning, which is a recommendation in the Institute of Education Sciences Practice Guide on improving adolescent literacy. According to this guide, schools and teachers should provide a positive learning environment that promotes students' autonomy in learning. Allowing students some choice has a positive impact on their engagement and reading comprehension. One of the ways that students' choice connects to engagement is that it allows students to pick text that is more relevant to their life experience. The National Council of Teachers of English Language Arts Journal focused in July 2022 on learning with and in community. Several of the articles describe the increase in a student's excitement about reading when something in the text was familiar to the student. There is clear evidence for the connection of student engagement and literacy learning. The essential practices in early and elementary literacy's first recommended practice is deliberate, research-informed efforts to foster literacy motivation and engagement, which includes providing daily opportunities for children to make choices in their reading and writing. The essential instructional practices for disciplinary literacy in the secondary classroom recommends that students have multiple opportunities to choose materials, products, and processes in their reading, writing, and communication.
This visual represents the shift in choice from the 2010 ELA standards to the 2020 ELA standards. In 2010, choice was a relatively small part of the reading standards and benchmarks. In 2020, choice is a pedagogical foundation for all literacy learning, including writing, reading, and listening, speaking, viewing, and exchanging ideas. You may notice that the strand language does not appear in the 2020 standards. That is because language benchmarks are now embedded in all three strands to foster authentic engagement with language development. Here are some additional important concepts for students' self-selection. As we mentioned, the concept of choice is embedded in all three strands in the ELA standards. Offering students choice in their reading materials is important both in independent individual reading and for class instruction and tasks. In addition to providing choice, it is essential that students have multiple opportunities to make meaning of their choices with connections to self, other, and world. Finally, bundling standards is one way to include self-selection along with other standards in a lesson or unit.
This is one example of how standards might be bundled in one unit to include student self-selection throughout the process of reading, writing, and exchanging ideas. Generally, there are two ways to come to a bundle of standards. You can look at a unit you want to teach and see what standards are naturally bundled together, or you can start with the standards you'd like to bundle and see what comes out in the unit plan. This is an example of bundled standards that could be used in a secondary unit on climate change and includes multiple opportunities for student choice. To begin, the teacher guides students through building background knowledge about climate change through reading a variety of informational texts, including multimodal texts such as websites and videos. That step is shown here in the first icons with a video and a stack of texts. Then, students choose one short story from the class anthology Afterglow, Climate Fiction for Future Ancestors. This anthology includes hopeful and forward-looking futuristic short stories that explore how the power of storytelling can help create the world we need. The glasses and pencil icons stand for students reading critically to comprehend, interpret, and analyze the theme of their chosen story, as well as the literary devices the author uses to both share an engaging story and persuade readers around climate change. Students might also analyze how the author's perspective and identity influences the content, meaning, and style of the text. Next, students prepare for and engage in a shared inquiry discussion, shown here with the circle and students talking, where they exchange ideas about the similarities and differences between themes across their short stories, as well as ways that the authors use narrative techniques to meet their purpose. Students then reflect on their participation and what they learned from their peers. For their summative assessment, students engage in an inquiry-based learning and research to learn more about a specific aspect of climate change that they choose according to their interest, shown here with the magnifying glass, question mark, and computer. They then write an original short story, practicing the narrative techniques they learned from their mentor texts, shown with the paper and pencil. As students create their projects, they move through the writing process from draft to structured feedback to revision, editing, and publishing. The infinity symbol here demonstrates that cyclical nature of the writing process. To complete the unit, students participate in a short story slam where they share excerpts from their stories with their classmates. This example includes multiple opportunities for student choice. On the left side of the screen, you can see the ELA standards that were bundled together in this example unit.
There are multiple ways teachers can support student choice across the curriculum. One way is to choose the size of the frame around that choice, small, medium, or large. Teachers will want to think about the purpose of various reading and writing tasks and use that purpose to choose the appropriate frame size. This slide shows a second grade example. A small frame in second grade might be a choice between two books that the teacher has selected. In this example, second graders might choose between two books about food of a culture, either Watercress by Andrea Wang or Bilal Cook's Doll by Aisha Saeed. These stories were both mentioned in the edition of NCTE Language Arts that we mentioned earlier from 2022. A medium frame might be any poem by one author about food. Laugheteria by Douglas Florian would be a good collection for students to look in to find poems with similar structure to one another. There are many AABB rhyming poems and many ABAB rhyming poems. The teacher could use one of these as an example and then ask students to find two more examples anywhere in the anthology. Finally, a large frame for second graders might be to allow them to choose any informational text from one section in the library. So taking the whole class to the animals section or the plants section and giving the students free rein to choose.
Here is an example for a hypothetical 9th grade classroom. A small frame might be a unit exploring Indigenous perspectives and including a choice between two novels, The Marrow Thieves by Sherry Dimelin, a member of the Georgian Bay Métis community, or The Night Wanderer by Drew Hayden Taylor, an Ojibwe author from the Curve Lake First Nations. Both of these novels are recommended in the newly published resource, A Guide to Reliable Native American Related Teaching Resources from Understand Native Minnesota. This guide provides suggested texts aligned with the 2020 ELA standards. A medium frame in a 9th grade class that is exploring narrative language and poetry might be a choice of any 2 poems from the collection This is the Honey, an anthology of contemporary Black poets, edited by Kwame Alexander. Finally, a large frame in a unit on modern plays might be any play by a 21st century American playwright. There may be times teachers want to remove the frame altogether. In that situation, students might be able to choose a text from a classroom or school library to read both in and out of class that connects with their interests, identities, and reading preferences.
The 2020 ELA standards ask students to make choices that consider their own and others' perspectives and identities. In order for them to develop that skill, we first need to offer explicit instruction in perspective and identity. It's important for educators to help students think about their own identities and perspectives as well as those of others. This builds metacognitive skills as well as students' abilities to make intentional choices. This next slide offers more detail on how identity and perspective are understood in the standards. The text is drawn from the appendix, which is a work in progress and will be available soon. Using these definitions in the classroom can support students' understanding of these important terms.
Dr. Dean Sims Bishop authored the theory that each student deserves to read both texts that are mirrors that reflect their own identities and lived experiences, and windows that reveal others' identities and lived experiences. Sometimes a window becomes a sliding glass door, where readers have only to walk through in imagination to become part of whatever world has been created and recreated by the author. This theory supports the 2020 ELA standards, which require students to read from multiple sources representing perspectives and identities like and unlike their own from dominant, non-dominant, and marginalized social groups. Thinking about texts as mirrors and windows helps students make meaning of what they read and draw connections to their own lives and the lives of others. It's important that students have opportunity for both mirror and window experiences. As Dr. Bishop writes, when children cannot find themselves reflected in books they read, they learn a powerful lesson about how they are devalued by the society of which they are a part. Additionally, children from dominant social groups have always found their mirrors in books, but they too have suffered from the lack of availability of books about others. As we've mentioned, students need explicit instruction and support in how to choose books that are just right for their specific purpose. The anchor chart on the left offers 4 lessons for choosing just right books, and these lessons connect perspective and identity. The middle anchor chart helps readers determine if the text complexity is the right fit. Finally, the third chart is a classroom-developed list of texts that have been mirrors and windows for a specific group of students. Collective lists like this help students see potential text choices, as well as how those texts function as mirrors or windows within their school community. This chart illustrates how a single text might be a window for one student, and that same text might be a mirror for another. When students are able to see all the ways they might choose a text, they can identify strategies for choosing that fit their need or purpose in the moment.
Another way to support student choice, engagement, and identity development is to offer text in multiple languages or bilingual text. The skills students develop by reading in their home language support their ability to read and write in English. Additionally, allowing students to read and write in both their home language and English builds a bridge between and across cultures, and it helps students know that their full selves are welcome and valued at school. In addition to the choice of topic or author, students should be able to choose from multiple genres and modes of reading, which includes graphic novels and audiobooks. Graphic novels, among other types of text, help students understand that text and reading can mean lots of different things. Audiobooks can be a strong scaffold for learners who need additional support accessing grade-level texts. Additionally, graphic novels and audiobooks are among the type of texts that engage with multiple modes of communication, including visual communication, oral communication, and finally, an important part of student engagement and literacy development is ensuring that all students have access to time to read independently during the school day. As we've discussed, this independent reading might be from various frames of choice, or it might be books students choose from a class or class library, or school library too.
We know that providing students choice comes with potential barriers and questions. This screen shows some frequently asked questions and our responses. Many teachers have asked, how do I give choice between texts that I haven't had a chance to read yet? Some options include working with colleagues to divide texts, each read one and then share with each other. Also to use resources such as your curricula or district-provided lists, as well as exploring book rationales that detail a text's content, complexity, and considerations for inclusion. Another question reads, my students can choose their own books to read from the school library and the classroom library for independent reading time. Does that meet the 2020 ELA standards? The answer is no. Student choice should be offered both for that independent or pleasure reading and also within academic tasks. Finally, some teachers have named that they only have access to the text provided by their districts. What are some resources to be able to provide choice in that situation? Thankfully, there are multiple resources for finding and selecting texts. We'll share some of those resources next.
Here we've listed multiple resources teachers can use to offer choice to students. The first is Minitex's K-12 school and library resources. Minitex is a state-funded library consortium that offers a wide range of materials, including curated collections in primary source sets. Another resource for offering choice is texts that are in the public domain. These are no longer copyrighted and often free to access. These texts should be balanced with primary resources from the time showing non-dominant perspectives. Additionally, students can get public library cards and use the Libby app for reserving and accessing ebooks and audiobooks. Teachers can build up their classroom libraries through community-based book drives and public library sales. Finally, there may be community offerings, such as the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux Communities Book Giveaway.
These are additional resources that both students and teachers can use to find and select texts. Benchmarks in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade explicitly name that students understand how to access and use literary award lists, curated book lists, and book reviews. Many of the award lists named here are from the annual American Library Association Awards. These highlight books and authors with Black, Latine, and LGBTQ+ identities, among many others. The St. Paul Public Library also holds an annual community read called Read Brave. This year's book was Man o' War by Corey McCarthy. There are also multiple curated lists that highlight texts by Dakota, Anishinaabe, and other Indigenous authors. Two we're going to highlight today are Odia Wood-Kruger's Guide to Reliable Native American-Related Teaching Resources and Dr. Debbie Reese's American Indians in Children's Literature blog. Here we have Understand Native Minnesota's webpage. To find the publication, you navigate to Publications here at the top, and then you can see a guide to reliable Native American-related teaching resources right here. This guide was written by Odia Wood-Kruger and includes recommendations for texts, along with lots of introductory material that supports how to find and select texts for your classrooms. You can see there's information about the Minnesota Native tribes, and then we get to the text lists. The other resource we're going to highlight today is American Indians in Children's Literature, a blog by Native children's literature scholar, Dr. Debbie Reese. This provides insight and critique related to books with Native content. This is a great resource if there's a book already in your curriculum or classroom and you'd like to see an evaluation of that text from a Native perspective. One example that you might put up in this search bar, and the search bar is in the top left, a little hard to see, might be Sharon Creech's Walk to Moons, which is an often taught text. You can see that Dr. Debbie Reese offers her thoughts and sustains an important dialogue about many texts. And finally, on the right are a list of additional blogs, newsletters, and websites that students and teachers can use to find and select books. You can access the links to these resources directly from the PDF copy of the PowerPoint. And in a subsequent webinar in this series, Curriculum and Text Review, we'll go into more detail about how to select books that are accurate and respectful and a good fit for a given academic purpose.
The Minnesota Council of Teachers of English is one of Minnesota's professional development organizations that supports teacher learning and engagement in ELA. MCTE has a diverse book club that anyone can join. You can sign up for book club meeting alerts and find collected resources from previous book club meetings on the MCTE website.
Thank you for taking the time to view this webinar. You can direct any questions to me, Kristen Bauk, at the email listed here. Keep an eye out for additional webinars in our 2020 ELA Standards Implementation Support Series and additional supports from the Minnesota Service Cooperatives. The PowerPoint slides used in this presentation are available on the MDE ELA implementation page. Thank you.